Hi there, my name's Peyton. I'm the head of patient care here at Navigator. I am so blessed to be able to connect with Jeremy Elster today. He was a stage 3 colorectal patient that came to our database here at Navigator about 2 years ago to try to find some available alternative treatment options for him. We were able to put him into contact with Oasis of Hope, and now he has been no evidence of disease. Jeremy has a passion of connecting and sharing with others his story to provide some hope for those that are navigating these murky waters and uncertainties. So we hope you find this beneficial and useful to you.
My name is Jeremy Elster. I'm now 53 years old. I just had a birthday a few weeks ago. I was a meteorologist for 25 years. I was doing some weather forecasting, mainly for the shipping industry. But I had to go on disability when I got sick. So I've been kind of just doing that for a little while now, since I've been recovered from my whole long cancer journey. And yeah, I'm happy to jump into that. It sort of started way back when, actually, when I was about 15. I was originally diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an inflammatory bowel disease. And this was back in the 1980s, before internet, before you could sort of do your own research of what was going on. And so my doctor, they couldn't tell me how the condition developed, and they also said there was no cure. So that kind of got me scratching my head a little bit at an early age about the medical system, about what they can offer you and what their ideas are about how to solve your problem. And so I kind of just managed symptoms for a long time, and got regular colonoscopies, the whole thing. So fast forward to 2018 now. I went in for a regular colonoscopy, and my GI doctor saw something that he didn't like, and so he wanted me to get a CT scan and then get referred to a surgeon. So that was kind of like the one initial thing that was a little bit of a red flag, because he said if I came in for regular colonoscopies every couple of years, that I should be fine. We could catch things early and whatnot. So yeah, I went to go get my CT scan scheduled, and it turns out it was denied by my insurance company straight away. So that was another flag along the way, red flag along the way. I knew I was up against not only whatever was going on with my health, but also the system. So that actually took a while to get that finally approved. We had to go back and forth for quite some time. And then I had the scan. It came back as benign. There was a mass in my rectum, but it wasn't coming back as malignant. So I took that scan. I went to see a surgeon over at Stanford University, which is the closest kind of major hospital to where I am. And straight away they said, "Oh, it's cancer," and I was like, "Well, your scan's not really confirming that." So another red flag. I didn't know really what to believe at that point. And of course, they're recommending a surgery for me to remove the mass, but unfortunately, where it was located in my rectum, it was going to require me to have a colostomy bag for the rest of my life. And I had been fighting that my whole life. Like, that was kind of the last thing that I wanted to do. So then I got another opinion from another facility here in California, and same sort of thing. Oh yeah, it's probably cancer. Let's just remove it and have a colostomy bag for the rest of my life. So that kind of went on for a while. I couldn't find, not only could I not find a proper diagnosis, but I could also not find any sort of treatment that sound like a good plan for me. So, time's now ticking away here, and now we're into 2019. I was starting to feel more and more sick. Up until that point, I didn't really feel anything. So what was happening was the mass wasn't really getting bigger in my rectum, but I was starting to get more inflammation there. So basically, like my entire rectum was sort of decreasing in diameter, essentially. So I was having a hard time eliminating any waste, and I wasn't eating much, and so I was really starting to go downhill fast at that point. So that was kind of in the fall of 2019. My family and I decided I should probably go to the ER because it was really starting to slip away from me at that point. So yeah, I checked myself into the ER, the local hospital here, and they wanted to do a major operation on me as well. They thought it was cancer, blah, blah, blah. Same sort of thing. Um, but as it turned out, I was in a critical state. My rectum had totally shut down. Turns out I had a massive abscess infection in my abdomen as well, 17 centimeters. So I was on the verge of just going totally septic and dying right there on the spot. So we decided to do this emergency surgery. It's called a transverse loop colostomy, and the thought process there was that we could do this diverting colostomy and then give my rectum a chance to heal up, or at least treat it in some fashion where I wasn't, on my deathbed trying to sort it all out. So that was, I had to sort of on the spot go, okay, temporary colostomy. They said I could reverse it if somehow my rectum was to fully heal. And I thought, okay, let's go for that. So as it turned out, I was in the hospital for 23 days, a couple days in ICU. Just I had to drain that infection. That took a long time. I had tubes coming out of every which way, out every single tube you can think of I had in my body. It was crazy. And then I had lost a ton of weight. I had lost a total of like 40 pounds by the time I got released from the hospital. Yeah, so it was pretty grim. So I knew I had a long recovery ahead. And so, yeah, I ended up coming all the way back from that. It took me about a year, almost a year, put all my weight back on and feel strong again. But I still hadn't solved my original problem, which was um, the mass in my rectum. So at that point, I decided to go back to the original surgeon and talk to him again. And, I told him about my new situation with the colostomy and everything. And so we decided to do some more testing. We did an MRI, we did another colonoscopy, and finally, still couldn't confirm my diagnosis of colorectal cancer after all this time. Even the hospital stay, they couldn't find it. They couldn't confirm it, and they even thought, oh, it must just be scar tissue or some sort of um, mass that wasn't presenting as malignant, a benign mass. So they couldn't tell me what it was. They couldn't. So yeah, I was in this weird state of not being able to figure out exactly what was going on, which was the hardest part up until that point. And it did get harder after that, but so yeah, eventually after a few more tests, they were finally able to confirm that I did have cancer. And oddly enough, it had spread a little bit into my prostate and kind of towards my bladder, like right next to the bladder. So, so yeah, at that point I was kind of stuck. I knew what they wanted to do to me, which was chemo, radiation, and then surgery. But since I had this ostomy, I couldn't really wiggle myself out of that situation because nobody would touch my situation with an ostomy. And I can't now a newly found cancer diagnosis. So I was kind of stuck. And so the surgeon was basically like, you gotta do the chemo and the radiation, and then maybe if you have a good response, we might be able to have a smaller surgical procedure. So, chemo and radiation was kind of the last thing I thought I would ever do. I think a lot of people probably would say the same thing. So yeah, I ended up doing it anyway. 8 rounds of chemo. Anybody that's done chemo knows that's pretty awful, even in the best case scenario. And then I did 30 radiation treatments after that. And then yeah, I had another scan. I was hoping for a really good response, but as it turned out, the response was pretty average. I had one tumor that had a great response, was totally gone. Another one, a small reduction in size. A third one, no response at all. And the fourth one actually got bigger. So I had a very mixed response. And, they can't tell you why some respond, some don't. So at this point, the surgical option was basically the nuclear option. Was the biggest one, it's the biggest surgery you can possibly imagine. It's called a TP, a total sorry, I'm having a little bit of a brain sprain. A
No,
TP.
okay. I wish I knew. I'd help you out.
Yeah, so it's a TP. It's basically like your entire a total pelvic exoneration. Sorry, your entire pelvic complex of organs will be removed. Yeah, so that was after all the chemo and the radiation. Like, that was my grand prize, was this huge surgery. I was now going to have 2 ostomy bags, one for number 1 and one for number 2. My bladder was removed, prostate, colon, rectum, anus, all of the seminal vesicles. So yeah, all this stuff was removed. They basically put the fear in me, saying that if I didn't get this, I was gonna die.
Right.
So begrudgingly,
Or you're very frustrated as is already with
yeah,
first lines of treatment not working, and second,
yeah. So I was going down this rabbit hole, and I felt like it was kind of slipping away from me every time I did the next stop. It was like another basically brick wall. So yeah, I went ahead and did the surgery. As it was a 15-hour surgery. I had 3 different surgeons. Yeah, it was crazy. But the interesting thing is they would only recommend the surgery to people that are strong enough to handle it. And so they're like, "Oh, you're strong, you can handle it." I was like, "Okay,
after
great."
you've gone through chemo and radiation,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I was like, "Oh, lucky me, I'm so strong. I'll get this 15-hour surgery and rip out my entire pelvic organ complex. That sounds awesome." But I was stuck at that point, so I had to go ahead and do it, begrudgingly, like I said. In the back of my mind, I had kind of always thought, like, I didn't believe in this. I didn't believe in the chemo and the radiations, surgical options. It just didn't seem like the right path for me. But like I said, I was kind of stuck, so I went ahead and did it. And so I had the surgery. It took me several months to heal from that and kind of get my strength back. And then I know I went 3 months post-op for my first scan, PET scan, and lo and behold, they found 15 new metastatic lesions, mainly on my liver, but all across my abdomen. And so, I talked to my surgeon who was in charge of my whole case, and of course, he said it was no longer part of his case since the lesions were in other parts of my body now. So, he had wiped his hands clean of my case and referred me to another surgeon. So at that point, I started thinking like, oh, this is not good. This is really not good after doing all this stuff and having this major surgery. Um, so yeah, they referred me to a liver surgeon, and he's like, well, this is not looking good. I don't think we can really help you. Um, and so they basically said, you might want to refer back to your oncologist. So she was basically like, I don't think we can do anything here either. You didn't have a good response previous time. So yeah, basically they told me that I was going to be, my days were numbered, and good luck, get your affairs in order and all that kind of stuff. So you can imagine, after all that I had gone through, to hear this was pretty heartbreaking. And I was contemplating giving up at that point. I'd gone through so much, and it seemed like there were no other good options. And yeah, like I said, in the back of my mind, I knew that that method wasn't really the right method for me, and that maybe that's why it didn't work very well. And I'd always kind of wanted to try a more holistic approach. So I talked to my family, and they started researching some cancer clinics in Mexico. And I didn't do much of the research they did, and I think they probably contacted Heal Navigator first to kind of figure out, kind of the best plan of attack. And yeah, we kind of decided on Oasis of Hope. They had been in business for the longest amount of time, and they seemed like they had the best track record. And so yeah, I sent up all my information, all my latest medical records and everything, and we had a call with one of the doctors, and they said, come on down as soon as you can. So within a week's time, we were down there. My sister and her partner and I all went down at the same time. And you can stop me anywhere along here if you have any questions.
No,
I know I'm just kind of
you're
rambling
actually
on.
hitting every question as we go, just so you know. I'm like, okay, well, I was gonna ask that one. I was gonna ask that one. I'm like,
Yeah.
this guy studied before he got on here, didn't he?
I've told the story a few times, so it's not my first time. but yeah, if I'm rambling on, feel free to interject.
No, I was gonna say, like, how did you hear about Heal Navigator? Like, how did you learn about alternative, treatment options? Did you like incorporate any alternative treatment options during like the chemo, radiation, surgery route? Did you change anything, or were you sticking strictly to standard of care? Because you did say that you were curious of these. You always had it in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Well, I was doing some alternative care on the side, but obviously my oncologist and my surgeon didn't want me doing anything that might interfere with their regimen, right? So that's the standard sort of answer you'll get if you do want to supplement some things on the side, is they don't know what some of the things like vitamin C infusions, for instance. I was doing that, and they have no idea. Your typical Western doctor doesn't know anything about vitamin C infusions or blood ozone or anything like that.
You're doing ozone too and vitamin C?
I was doing it for a while, and they said stop. And like I said, I didn't.
Stop. They tell people stop vitamins too, and
Yeah, like they said, they don't know anything about it, and they think it's going to interfere with their treatment. So, it's one of those ones where you're not really sure what to do. So I did stop temporarily. So anyway, back to the Oasis of Hope. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you describe like your first impressions of the clinic in Tijuana, the medical team there? Like what were your thoughts going to Mexico? Let's start with that. Because that's always a question.
Yeah.
People are always very skeptical of coming to Mexico. They're like,
Sure.
Mexico, Tijuana. What do you mean Tijuana? Isn't it dangerous there? Like, isn't the cartel involved there? Like all these questions I constantly hear whenever I talk to patients. So
Right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I actually grew up in San Diego, so I'd been to Mexico quite a few times. So I didn't have any reservations at all about going to Mexico, but I understand like people that have never been there, and I hear the stories. And but yeah, it's great. I live in Northern California. I just flew to San Diego, and they pick you up right at the airport and in the van and just take you right down to the hospital. It's only like a 20-minute drive from the airport. It's very convenient.
The tollway
And,
going too. It's very
yeah, going down, it's short. It's super short going down. And then yeah, once I got at the hospital, everyone was very friendly, and it just seemed like a totally different experience from day one. Your typical hospital in the States, everyone just looks really sick and they're being poisoned and cut up into a million pieces. And that doesn't seem like a very healing, and they feed you terrible food. Just that environment didn't seem very healing at all. But at the Oasis of Hope, it just had a completely different feel about it. As soon as you walked in the door, everyone was very friendly and willing to help. The doctors are very thorough. They spent as much time as needed to go over your entire case and describe, the treatments that they were considering as far as your total protocol goes. And yeah, I was very happy to have my sister and her partner along with me, which was great. It was during the whole COVID lockdown situation where, hospitals in the United States, they weren't really allowing visitors at all, unless you had, a negative COVID test and possibly even some vaccines in some cases. So yeah, when I got there, I felt right at home, felt very comfortable. There were, obviously a lot of other patients there that were going through a lot of the same stuff and had some of the same journeys as I did. So, we had a lot to share with one another. And so that was great. But yeah, we started the treatment basically the very next day, and they're all non-toxic. They don't make you feel sick like you would get with your chemo and standard of care in most other hospitals. So I felt great the entire time. Granted, I didn't have any pain yet from any of the new tumors that had developed. So yeah, the whole time I felt great. I was ambulatory. I was able to walk and do everything. I know some people have had, that were having pain in their bones or whatnot, and weren't able to walk. That was definitely a little bit more difficult for them. But in terms of myself, I walked every day, was doing push-ups and exercising, and I felt great.
Did you utilize the gym? Did they have the gym next
Yeah,
door?
I went down to the gym a few times, and yeah, the treatments, there were treatments every day, but it wasn't all day, so you still had plenty of time to relax and go for a walk. And the food is amazing, super healthy, organic food, and they tailor it to your specific needs based on your situation. So yeah, I felt nourished with the food, and I felt nourished with the treatments, and I really felt like it was the right place for me. It had a much more healing feel to it, as opposed to the cut and burn and poison regime.
It's a very serene facility too. You
Yeah.
said about nourishment too. You met with their nutritionist because they have like
Mhm.
a nutritionist on site as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they go through your whole case and any food allergies you might have. And I was trying to put some weight on still after my surgery, so we were doing some plant-based protein to kind of get my protein intake up to help put some muscle and weight back on. And yeah, it was perfectly tailored to my situation. And then yeah, I was there for 3 weeks, my first visit. And it was great. I really felt like I turned the corner, and was on my path to really healing myself this time. And so after the 3 weeks was up, there's also a home protocol where they give you a bunch of supplements, and there's a few meds as well. So it's not I wouldn't say it's 100% unnatural, but it's pretty close to 100%.
Integrative. So that's
Yeah.
like, I talk to patients, they're like, I want to do things holistic. They
Yeah.
have to break down and describe the difference between holistic, like Gerson, for instance, where they're not going to do like different modalities other than, you know, the castor oil packs, coffee enemas, your diet. Like that's your Gerson protocol. That's holistic versus say, you know, Oasis of Hope, which is more, I mean, it is a hospital setting. So people kind of get pushed off from that. But I'm like, it's an integrative hospital. So,
Yeah.
you know, they do metronomic oral chemo,
Yeah.
but it's more of a lower controlled dosing too. So that was a question I was going to ask you is like the treatments that you had done there, knowing that you're getting chemo, what was your thoughts of whenever they said, hey, chemo is part of your regimen? Because you've already done chemo.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, it's a low dose. And, you know, if you supplement it with the other parts of the protocol, the home protocol, you know, the chances are that you won't have any negative side effects. So in my mind, that was how I was approaching it. Like, okay, it's low dose. I'll supplement it with the other parts of the protocol. I even asked them if vitamin C, IVs, and ozone, which was part of the protocol in the hospital, would that be beneficial? And said, yeah, go ahead and do it. So I was doing that in conjunction with the oral chemo and the other supplements, and I never had any negative response at all in terms of you know, other symptoms that people sometimes get with the oral chemo. So yeah, for me, I never had one side effect from any of the treatments or the oral chemo, and yeah, and we can get into this later, but I'm still staying with the protocol, and I'm, you know, it's been almost 2 years now since my original visit to Oasis of Hope, and so anyway, yeah, there's more to the story.
So
After
what's it like a average day of being a patient at Oasis of Hope, like from the time you wake up till the time you rest, whatever the case looks like for you?
Yeah, so you wake up, they usually want to check your blood pressure and vitals first thing. And then I usually just go down to breakfast after that. And then after breakfast, generally start the treatment, the IVs. And then there's also the blood ozone, which I only did the first couple of times when I was there. And then there's hyperthermia, which you do, I think, once per week, the first 3 weeks. So yeah, basically you kind of alternate between getting treatment, having meals, going to see you know, they have a service every morning with Ernesto, the pastor, which is very uplifting, and so yeah, they, you know, they treat the mind, body, and spirit at Oasis, and I think, you know, that's a huge factor because when you're sick, you know, you do you know, occasionally get depressed. I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of what happens to people, and you can lose your faith a little bit. So it's good down there. They really get you centered and they really keep you positive. And yeah, I think that's a huge part of healing yourself is staying positive and really believing in the process and believing in yourself, believing in the team down there and what they're telling you. And so yeah, fast forward 3 months, I had another scan, and 12 of the lesions, the metastatic lesions, were completely gone. And the other 3 had severely decreased metabolic activity, which essentially means like they're almost dead. They're dying almost dead. So yeah, so that's after 3 months of the protocol. And so they considered my case to be essentially a miracle. Like that, I had such a miraculous response to their treatment and their whole protocol that they started calling me the Miracle Man, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so I went down again at the 3 month mark after my PET scan and had another follow up treatment, and yeah, that the next scan 3 months later was totally clear. So, 3 months I was almost totally clear, and then after 6 months I was completely clear. So yeah, I had an amazing response. After going through all that I went through, and then having my medical team in the United States basically give up on me and tell me I was going to die, yeah, they essentially saved me from impending doom. And yeah, I've now gone back a total of 5 times. I'm on an annual basis now, so once a year I go down and I get the dendritic cell treatment, which is something they developed about 10 years ago, and that's really increased their efficacy rates. And I really think that's the key. I should say one of the key components to the whole treatment protocol was the dendritic cell treatment. So yeah, I go back down for that once a year now. I was just down there last month, or yeah, beginning of October for a week, and my scans have been clear ever since that second scan after my first initial visit. So yeah, I mean, I can't be happier. But I am living with 2 ostomies now, which is a challenge. But that all happened before Oasis. So yeah, I mean, my message to people out there that are faced with cancer diagnosis is, consider all of your options. Even in my case, having that temporary colostomy bag saved my life, because I would have absolutely died in the emergency room.
Yeah. I was going to say earlier that thankful that you and your family came together and was like, you need to get into the hospital.
Yeah, yeah, because I was in a little bit of a denial. Like I said before, having an ostomy was really kind of, I mean, it's not anyone's idea of
Right. Not
what they want for
ideal.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was fighting that from day one. I was like, that's not for me. And I would rather not live than have one of those. I think that's
Tied to your identity. Yeah.
yeah. And I've belonged to some of these ostomy groups for quite some time, and that's really what people think. That's almost what everyone thinks from the start is, I'd rather die than have an ostomy. So now I have 2, and I'm living my best life. I surf, I windsurf, I snowboard, I do all the things I was doing before. And so, yeah, my message is anybody that's considering or with a newly diagnosed cancer situation, consider all of your options. And, you know, I understand, like, there's a commitment. You have to go against the regular system, and that's very challenging to finally come to that conclusion. Like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. You have family and friends and coworkers and neighbors telling you that you can't go to Mexico. What are you doing? So you're fighting a lot of different fights all at once. Um, but yeah, for me, I felt like it was just the right plan all along. And my only, I don't want to say regret, but if I were to do it all over again, I would go at least consider going down to Oasis of Hope first, or another clinic like that. And because for me, it was just the right plan all along. And yeah, I'm grateful that we even had the opportunity to go. When we did go, they said, "Well, you're here now, which is all that matters," and that's absolutely true. So
I never go
yeah,
back and say like, well, if I did it, if I did it different, or I should have done it different. Um,
yeah. There's
I
no
believe
going back.
that's a
Yeah,
there's a divine reason for everything. Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Happens. As hard as it is to look at it in the moment or even afterwards sometimes, but there is a
for
reason
sure.
for it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
While you were at Oasis of Hope, and you were getting like the therapies and treatments there, did you notice like any improvements like within your energy or like maybe like not as much pain and something that might have been more uncomfortable? Anything that would have given you like a precursor or more encouragement that, oh yes, these therapies are working while I'm here? Or did you only know whenever you went back home and got your diagnostic follow-up?
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned earlier, I didn't really have any pain. I mean, I still wasn't quite totally healed from my surgery, but I didn't really have any pain from the new tumors that were found. We I guess caught those relatively early. So, but yeah, I mean, just with the getting the vitamin C and the blood ozone, like you do feel kind of charged up, more energy. Um, and so, yeah, just my mental energy was better too, because I really felt like I was in the right place, like I said before, for my healing. So I just felt better about my outlook in general. Um, and so that was a huge step in the right direction, just knowing that I was in the right place. Um, and yeah, like my healing journey could truly begin at that point. They're willing to work with you too. Like if you, I mean, they do surgeries there, and
Right.
I even talked to them about, you know, in hindsight, like could I have gone about this a different way? And they said, yeah, we probably would have, eliminated the main tumor and then treated the rest. Um, so yeah, even if you do need a surgery, they do operations there, and they're willing to work with you. Whereas, like I said before, my surgical team, oncology team, it was either their way or no way at all. Right. So that's where I think a lot of people probably feel trapped is they have to do the whole protocol or not at all. And I was one of those people that was kind of trapped. So yeah, they're willing to work with you. It's patient first. I mean, they'll obviously give their
Pros and cons always.
yeah, yeah, but they're all about what's best for you, not what's best for them.
I have
Um,
patients quite often that go there that even deny like the chemo. I had
yeah.
a CML patient, which is leukemia, and
Hmm.
usually like with leukemia, they want you to do chemo, even an alternative. And Oasis was very respectful with like her denying the chemo
Yeah.
there. So they're
Yeah.
definitely for the patient and very supportive. They understand though that like these patients, they're coming from standard of care where you're backed into a corner, like you said, like
Yeah.
you I don't follow your way. There's no way I'm being dropped as a patient, essentially. But then again, it also
Yeah.
has the establishment that the doctors work under too. It's like the umbrella. So you have to follow like
Yeah.
protocol as well.
No, it's true. It's a long, even my insurance company, I was fighting with them the whole time. They didn't want to pay for anything, even though I had been paying them for years and years and years. So yeah, there are different layers that you're dealing with, and they're all sort of working against you for the most part. So it's hard. You need a whole team of people. My family was working around the clock. Like I said, that first scan was denied, and then there was a million things after that we had to fight with them about. Um, so yeah, there's so many different layers to uh, getting the treatment that you want, and nobody, like I said, nobody wants chemo, radiation, surgery. That's not something anybody wants, and unfortunately, they don't really address the root problem, and oftentimes, the cancer can metastasize and come back and even stronger than before, because your body's been so depleted from all the toxins and everything that yeah, you may find that you can be cancer free for a short while doing all that stuff, but in my opinion and the opinions of a lot of the you know holistic doctors, they just don't think that that's the right approach for the long term. I mean, the short term is the short term. You kind of find yourself in the situation sometimes that, like I said, you can't really get yourself out of. But yeah, and you have to make short term. Like I said, I was in the ER. Like I would have died if I didn't get that original colostomy. So sometimes you just have to do what you have to do in the short term. But yeah, that's why I would encourage people to at least consider their options. I mean, a lot of people plan for their future in terms of finances and retirement and college education for their kids and all this kind of stuff, but they don't really have a plan for their health if something goes wrong, in particular cancer.
had any advice for people that are like considering going to Tijuana or to like alternative treatment facilities elsewhere, what would it be?
Yeah, well, I would say go sooner rather than later. The sooner the better, in my opinion. I know, like we were talking about before, it's a difficult decision. You're going against the standard of care, which is very powerful. And then there's the monetary side too. It's not covered by insurance, so you have to come up with, a reasonable amount of money. So, but yeah, put put aside some money for a rainy day. And if you're considering going, I would go as soon as possible. Yeah, I mean, in my case, going right away uh, was a huge part of my recovery. Looking back on it, if I had waited longer, then maybe I would have had some pain, and then maybe it would have been much more difficult to kind of get back on the right track. So sooner the better. Yeah, look into all of your options. And even if you don't have cancer, like I said, I would still consider what your plan might be in case things do go wrong. And obviously, pray that you never get cancer, but in the off chance that you do, have a plan.
Sticking like to a diet similar to what Oasis recommended for you, or have you
Very
changed?
similar. Yeah, very similar. Um, yeah, I mean, like I said, I was trying to put on a lot of weight at the original visit, but now my weight's up where I like it to be, so I'm kind of tapered back on the protein a little bit. But yeah, overall, it's basically the same diet. Um, and yeah, I mean, I really think that diet's a huge part of your healing process, and certainly exercise if you're able. Sleep, all the things that you can do to improve your situation. Minimize stress. I mean, everyone has stress in their lives, but if you can minimize that, then you're coming out way ahead. Um, and yeah, that's what I've been doing. And just yeah, I focus on my health every single day. That's my main job right now, and probably will be for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. I appreciate you connecting with me today, sharing your story and
Yeah, absolutely.
future patients. And I always appreciate you being so willing also to talk to people, or even you messaging me being like, I'm still talking to people. I'm still here. Yes, I know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I
Bad
mean, if
sometimes though. I'm like, oh goodness, I feel like I'm gonna overwhelm this guy listening everyone.
no, I actually enjoy talking to people. It's therapeutic for me, and you know, I've been through it all, so I feel like I'm in a good position to talk to people because I've done pretty much all there is out there,
Yeah.
and come out on the other side, better than I've been in the last 5 years. So yeah, just giving people hope that just because you're given a diagnosis doesn't mean that you have to stop living, um, and yeah, it really just don't give in to the fear. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it too. Is people get overcome by fear, and whereas at the Oasis of Hope, it's all about hope. I mean, it's in their name. They want you to be hopeful about your treatment, about your future, and yeah, it's just a totally different way of doing it, and the right way in my mind, like 100%.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you.
Sure, Peyton. Yeah, anytime. Yeah, that was great. I really enjoyed it.